The December sun began to set over General Santos City, painting the Philippine sky with golden hues that reflected in the windows of the modest house where Manny had chosen to spend his 45th birthday. Unlike the grand celebrations of the past, when crowds would gather to celebrate the boxing icon, this day unfolded in contemplative silence. The living room walls were decorated with photographs that told the story of an extraordinary life. From the first fights in makeshift rings to the great international stadiums, each image carried memories of glory and sacrifice. The kitchen table remained empty, without the traditional birthday cake that his late mother and Dionysia used to prepare with such care. Manny watched through the window as children played on the dirt road, their laughter echoing like familiar melodies that transported him back to his own childhood. The smell of adobo drifted from the neighboring house, mixing with the tropical breeze that entered through the half-open door, creating a nostalgic atmosphere that made his heart ache with longing. His children had sent loving messages and gifts from abroad, where they were building their own lives. But although the gestures warmed his heart, nothing could replace their physical presence, and the emptiness left by their absence was impossible to ignore. His calloused hands, which had once been lethal weapons in the rings, now trembled slightly as he leafed through an album of old photographs. Each page revealed faces of people who had marked his journey, dedicated trainers, loyal friends, respected opponents, and especially the humble fans who had always believed in his dreams, even when everything seemed impossible. The phone rang several times during the day, journalists seeking statements about retirement and businessmen offering commercial opportunities, but Manny preferred the silence of reflection. Sitting in his favorite armchair, he contemplated how life had transformed since the days when he sold cigarettes on the streets to help his family survive. Gratitude filled his chest, mixed with an inexplicable sensation that something special was about to happen, as if the universe was preparing a surprise that would completely change his perception of this seemingly ordinary birthday. The afternoon drifted slowly as Manny prepared simple tea, his thoughts wandering between memories of the past and uncertainties about the future. The sound of birds in the backyard mixed with the distant voices of neighbors, creating an urban symphony typical of Philippine afternoons. He didn't know that, just a few kilometers away, an extraordinary journey was being initiated by someone who carried a story capable of touching his heart in a profound and unexpected way. In a small village in the mountains of Bukidnon, Manny's home province, a 27-year-old young woman named Amihan walked determinedly along the dusty road, carrying on her back a worn backpack, and in her heart a mission she considered more important than her own life. Her bare feet stepped carefully on the loose stones, while the scorching midday sun tested her physical and emotional resistance. Amihan had saved every centavo for months, working in banana plantations and selling fruit at the local market, all to afford the bus fare to General Santos City, where she hoped to find her childhood hero. The backpack she carried contained much more than simple clothes and water for the journey. It carefully guarded a handwritten letter written just weeks before, but mentally crafted for years, with trembling but emotion-filled calligraphy. Amihan had drafted and rewritten those words dozens of times during the past weeks, seeking to find the perfect way to express a gratitude that transcended any known language. Her brown eyes sparkled with contained tears whenever she thought about the moment when she could personally deliver that message to the man who, unknowingly, had saved her family from an irreversible tragedy. The bus that would take her to the city departed only in the late afternoon, but Amihan had left home at dawn to make sure she wouldn't miss the week's only opportunity. During the walk, she recalled with vivid details the night 10 years ago when her mother, Remedios, was gravely ill and the family had no money for the necessary medical treatment. It was the eve of Manny's great fight against an international opponent, and the entire village had gathered at the only neighbor's house who owned a television to watch the fight that would place the Philippines at the center of the sporting world. On that historic night, while Manny achieved another spectacular victory, something magical happened in Amihan's small village. The owner of the only local pharmacy, moved by the boxer's performance and inspired by the national pride he felt, spontaneously decided to donate all the medications necessary to treat Remedios, refusing any payment and declaring that this was his way of celebrating Philippine glory. The unexpected generosity of the pharmacist saved Amihan's mother's life. But the family always knew that the true inspiration for that act of kindness had come from the courage and determination that Manny demonstrated in the ring. Now, at 27, Amihan worked as a volunteer teacher in the same village where she grew up, dedicating her life to educating underprivileged children and perpetuating the values of perseverance she learned by observing her idol's trajectory. The letter in her backpack didn't ask for favors or seek personal benefits. It was simply a testimony of how one person's greatness can inspire acts of kindness in a chain reaction, creating waves of positivity that spread across generations. Amihan walked with the certainty that she needed to deliver that message personally, no matter what obstacles she encountered along the way. The Coronadal bus terminal buzzed with activity when Amihan finally arrived. Her legs trembling with exhaustion after hours of walking under the relentless sun. The chaotic environment, with street vendors shouting food offers and passengers pushing to board crowded buses, contrasted dramatically with the peace of the mountains she had left behind. She held her backpack firmly, protecting the precious letter while searching for the correct platform, her eyes slowly adapting to the urban confusion surrounding her. In line to buy a ticket, Amihan discovered that the money she had saved wouldn't be enough for the complete trip to General Santos City. The ticket office clerk, a middle-aged man with a tired expression, explained that prices had increased due to the year-end holiday, leaving her with only half the necessary amount. Tears of despair began to form in her eyes as she mentally calculated that she wouldn't have another opportunity to make this trip before it was too late, since Manny's birthday was that very day. During the long minutes she remained in line, watching other passengers buy their tickets with ease, a simple-looking man observed her discreetly from afar. Kadyo, a 35-year-old mechanic who was initially traveling on business to General Santos City, had noticed the young woman's expression of despair, and something in her determined posture, even facing difficulty, awakened in him a painful memory of his own moments of struggle. He recognized in her the same look he had seen in the mirror years ago when facing his own financial and emotional battles. When Amihan left the line visibly dejected, Kadyo approached discreetly, offering to pay the ticket difference without expecting anything in return. His kind eyes reflected a deep understanding of struggle and sacrifice, as if he recognized in Amihan something familiar from his own life journey. She tried to refuse the generosity, explaining that she had no way to repay the favor, but Kadyo gently insisted, revealing that he was also traveling to General Santos City, and that, although his trip was initially for work, he felt that perhaps this was also his mission on that special day. The bus journey became a journey of mutual discoveries, with Amihan and Kadyo sharing stories about how Manny's example of perseverance had influenced their lives in different but equally significant ways. Kadyo told how he had grown up watching Manny's fights, finding inspiration to overcome his own financial difficulties after an accident that left him temporarily disabled. As the Philippine landscape passed by the window, with golden rice fields and small rural communities, both felt that this casual encounter was not coincidence, but part of a greater plan that was leading them towards something extraordinary. During the 3-hour journey to General Santos City, Amihan and Kadyo deepened their conversation, revealing more intimate layers of their personal stories. Amihan described with palpable emotion how Manny's victory on that historic night had triggered a chain reaction of kindness that saved her mother, transforming not only her family, but her entire perspective on the power of human inspiration. Her words flowed with touching sincerity, painting a vivid picture of a community united by national pride and the spontaneous generosity that sprouted from Filipino hearts in that magical moment. Kadyo listened attentively, his eyes filling with tears as he recognized surprising parallels in his own experience. He revealed how, 5 years ago, when he was unemployed and struggling to support his family after the accident that left him with permanent physical limitations, he had watched one of Manny's fights on a neighbor's television. The boxer's relentless determination, refusing to give up even when losing on points, inspired Kadyo not to abandon his own dreams and continue looking for work until he found the mechanic shop where he finally managed to rebuild his life. As the bus approached its destination, both shared a growing feeling of nervousness and expectation. Amihan admitted she didn't have a specific plan to find Manny, only faith that destiny would guide her to him. Kadyo, in turn, revealed that he had brought with him a small handmade gift, a metal miniature of a boxer, carefully sculpted during his spare time at the shop, representing his artistic way of expressing gratitude to the man who inspired him never to give up. The urban landscape of General Santos City began to appear on the horizon, with its modest buildings and busy streets that contrasted with the rural serenity from where they came. Amihan nervously held her letter, while Kadyo adjusted the small package containing his sculpture, both conscious that they were about to embark on the most uncertain part of their journey. The bus driver announced their arrival at the terminal, and the two new friends looked at each other with a mixture of determination and anxiety, knowing that the real challenge was just beginning. Upon disembarking, the reality of the situation hit them with full force. How to find one of the Philippines' most famous personalities in a city of hundreds of thousands of inhabitants, without an address, without contacts, armed only with hope and an unshakable faith in human kindness. The terminal buzzed with activity, with taxi drivers offering rides and street vendors announcing their products, creating an urban cacophony that made even more challenging the mission they had set out to accomplish on that special day. The streets of General Santos City pulsed with life under the afternoon sun, while Amihan and Kadyo began their seemingly impossible search. They started by asking local merchants, jeepney drivers, and pedestrians if they knew where Manny might be spending his birthday. But the answers were discouraging. Some mentioned that he traveled frequently, others suggested he might be in Manila for professional commitments, and many simply didn't have updated information about his location. Hours passed as they walked through the city's main avenues, visiting boxing gyms, well-known restaurants, and places where Manny used to appear in the past. With each door they knocked on, each question without a positive answer, hope seemed to diminish, but neither considered giving up. Amihan felt blisters forming on her feet due to excessive walking, while Kadyo noticed that his savings for the return trip were being rapidly depleted with the city's transportation costs. When the sun began to set, painting the sky with orange tones typical of tropical sunsets, they found themselves in a small park in the city center, both physically and emotionally exhausted. Amihan held her letter with trembling hands, questioning whether she had been too naive to believe she could find her idol in such a large city. Kadyo observed his small metal sculpture, reflecting on how dreams sometimes seem closer in our imagination than in concrete reality. It was in this moment of discouragement that an elderly lady, a flower vendor in the park for more than 30 years, approached them with maternal curiosity. Marilu had built her life in that park, witnessing stories of love, farewells, and reunions, developing a special instinct for recognizing souls in search of something important. She had heard fragments of their conversation and, touched by the sincerity of their mission, offered to help with information that could be valuable. Marilu revealed that she recognized something familiar in Amihan because years ago she had worked as a cleaning assistant for a distant cousin of Manny's, and through that connection learned that he maintained a discreet house in the city's oldest region, where he sought moments of peace away from the spotlight. She explained that the house was known only to old neighbors in the region, who religiously respected his privacy, creating an environment where he could live like an ordinary person. The revelation rekindled the flame of hope in their hearts, and Marilu, feeling that this was her way of giving back for all the joy that Manny had provided to the Filipino people, offered to accompany them part of the way, guiding them through the final stage of a journey that had tested not only their physical resistance, but also their faith in the ability of dreams to become reality. The residential street where Marilu had guided them breathed tranquility, with modest houses aligned under the shade of leafy trees and the soft sound of children playing in backyards. Amihan and Kadyo followed nervously behind the lady, who discreetly pointed to a corner house with a well-maintained garden and a simple iron gate. Their hearts raced simultaneously when Marilu confirmed in a whisper that this was indeed the residence where Manny used to retreat for moments of peace and reflection, away from the tumult of public life. Marilu said goodbye with an encouraging smile, wishing the two young people luck and reminding them that sometimes life's greatest gifts come wrapped in the simplicity of sincere gestures. Amihan and Kadyo were left alone in front of the gate, observing the house through the bars, where they could see lights on in the windows and clear signs that someone was home. The smell of homemade Filipino food escaped through the kitchen window, mixing with the aroma of garden flowers and creating a domestic atmosphere that contrasted dramatically with the champion's public image. For several minutes, they remained motionless, gathering courage to take the next step. Amihan carefully removed the letter from her backpack, her hands trembling with the day's accumulated emotion, while Kadyo firmly held his small metal sculpture, nervously polishing it with his shirt sleeve. Both knew that this moment represented the culmination of a journey that had begun with distant dreams and materialized through determination, extraordinary coincidences, and the kindness of strangers who had become angels on their path. The sound of footsteps approaching the house door made their hearts almost stop beating. Amihan and Kadyo looked at each other one last time, sharing a gaze that mixed nervousness, expectation, and deep gratitude for having made it this far together. The handwritten letter in her hands represented 10 years of silent gratitude, while Kadyo's sculpture symbolized years of inspiration transformed into art. Both took deep breaths, knowing they were about to experience a moment they would remember for the rest of their lives, regardless of the outcome. With courage renewed by the proximity of their goal, Amihan approached the gate and extended her hand toward the doorbell. The metallic sound echoed through the garden, followed by a silence that seemed eternal. Footsteps approached the main door, and through the frosted glass they could see the silhouette of a figure heading to answer them. Kadyo gently held Amihan's arm in a gesture of mutual support, while both prepared for the encounter that had motivated their entire extraordinary journey. Conscious that they were about to discover if dreams can really become reality when pursued with pure hearts and genuine intentions. The sound of the lock being opened echoed like celestial music to Amihan and Kadyo's ears, followed by the soft creaking of the wooden door's hinges. When the familiar figure of Manny Pacquiao appeared in the doorway, wearing simple clothes and with an initially surprised expression, time seemed suspended in a bubble of pure emotion. His kind eyes, which had faced fearsome opponents in the world's most important rings, now reflected genuine curiosity as they observed the two nervous young people standing at his gate, clearly moved by being in his presence. Amihan tried to speak, but the words got tangled in her throat while involuntary tears began to stream down her cheeks. All the mental preparation she had done during the trip disappeared when faced with the reality of having her childhood hero, just meters away, looking directly at her with respectful attention. Kadyo noticed his journey companion's emotional state and stepped forward, managing to murmur a simple introduction, explaining that they had traveled from far away specifically to find him on his birthday. Manny instinctively looked around, like someone who ponders for a second about the unexpected situation, but the sincerity in Amihan and Kadyo's eyes dissolved any doubt or concern. Without hesitation, he completely opened the gate and invited them in, his natural Filipino hospitality overriding any security or privacy concerns. As they walked through the garden toward the house's veranda, he discreetly observed Amihan's simple backpack and both their humble appearance, recognizing in them reflections of his own modest origins and the daily struggle he knew so well. On the veranda, under the soft light of garden luminaires, Manny offered comfortable seats and fresh water, his protective and generous instinct manifesting naturally. Amihan finally managed to recover her voice, beginning to explain with words broken by emotion how she had discovered his address and why she had made this extraordinary journey. Her hands trembled as she held the letter, explaining that it contained a story she needed to share personally, a story about how his greatness had saved a life indirectly but profoundly significantly. Kadyo remained in respectful silence, observing the interaction between Amihan and Manny, feeling privileged to witness that intimate moment of human connection. The sculpture in his hand seemed small and insignificant compared to the moment's grandeur, but he knew it represented years of admiration and gratitude that finally found an opportunity for expression. The Philippine night air carried a special energy, as if the universe itself was pausing to allow that extraordinary encounter to unfold in its fullness, connecting three lives in ways that transcended any rational explanation. When Amihan began reading her letter with a voice choked by emotion, telling in detail about the night her mother was dying and how Manny's victory had inspired the local pharmacist to donate the medications that saved Remedios, tears began to form in the champion's eyes. Each word from the young teacher carried a deep emotional charge, revealing how a moment of sporting glory had transformed into a wave of kindness that changed the destiny of an entire family in the distant mountains of Bukidnon. Manny listened in absolute silence, his own memories of that historic fight mixing with Amihan's touching narrative. He remembered the pressure, the determination, the struggle against adversities he had faced that night, but had never imagined that his performance could have such profound and personal consequences in the lives of ordinary people. When Amihan finished reading, explaining how that experience had inspired her to dedicate herself to educating underprivileged children in her native village, Manny needed a few moments to process the magnitude of what he had heard. Kadyo then approached respectfully, presenting his small metal sculpture and sharing his own story of overcoming, inspired by Manny's example of perseverance. The boxer delicately held the handcrafted artwork, examining each detail worked with love and dedication. Understanding that this piece represented much more than molded metal, it was the tangible materialization of dreams that refused to die in the face of life's difficulties. The tears that Manny had contained during the entire account finally began to flow freely down his face when he embraced first Amihan and then Kadyo, murmuring words of gratitude for having shared their stories with him. In that moment, the world champion understood that his greatest victories had not happened in international rings, but in the hearts and lives of ordinary people who found inspiration in his journey to transform their own realities through determination and honest work. As the night progressed, the three remained on the veranda talking about dreams, overcoming, and hope's transformative power, creating a deep connection that transcended any social or economic differences. Manny insisted that Amihan and Kadyo stay for dinner, transforming what had begun as a solitary birthday into the most meaningful celebration of his life, surrounded by people who had proven that true greatness is measured not by titles won, but by the positive impact we have on others' lives. Later that night, with reverential care, Manny placed Kadyo's sculpture on the fireplace and framed Amihan's letter, positioning it next to his greatest victories, not as a trophy, but as a beacon of what truly matters. Constant reminders that each of our actions can plant seeds of kindness that bloom in places and moments we could never imagine, creating an infinite chain of love and inspiration that connects human hearts across generations.
Leave your like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss the next cases.